The Downtown Rams podcast is brought to you by our proud sponsors, Rams on Demand, SeatGiant, Throwback Joe, and now our new sponsor, Kayvon Webster's new LA food truck, VYBE 305, from South Beach to Sunset. Hashtag catch a vibe. For more information, check out vibe305.com today. Now enjoy the show.
35-30. Robert Woods, first down 20. 10-5. Touchdown. LA.
It's a blinding light underneath the dirt down.
So it's Goff who keeps it. And Goff goes crashing into the end zone.
6th Street Bridge.
Aaron Donald almost beat the football there and comes away with his third sack of the afternoon. Not immediately in sack. Corey Littleton, have yourself a day.
When will you save?
Todd Gurley, 20, 10. Gurley for MVP. Touchdown LA. And he gets gobbled up. Savage has to eat it as Michael Brockers picks up the sack.
It's picks. Nicole Roby coming.
He's decked by Eden Cobb.
Touchdown! Brandon Cooks! Incredible!
For the first time since 2003, the Rams are NFC West champions.
Welcome back, guys, to another Downtown Rams podcast, episode 118. It is the Rams season preview show. I am here with Joe Curley, and before we get into it, just want to let you guys know, if you like what you hear, be sure to subscribe on iTunes, leave us a comment. Really appreciate all the reviews you guys leave us. And the Discord channel, I haven't really mentioned it in a while, but we do have almost 100 people in there. And I think it is going to get pretty rowdy since Rams football is right around the corner. So if you want to get in on the action, you want to join the Discord channel, links will be posted all over our social media. So without further ado, Joe, I think it's time that we do this, because I know we talked about it last week, and we decided to wait a week and do it right before the first game of the season. So I'm pretty excited about this season preview, and I appreciate you, taking the time to join me on here, because I did not want to do this myself.
No problem. Perfect information is the best way to do something like this. I like to wait. It's kind of like when we do our fantasy drafts. I like to wait until right before the season starts, so we can take in all the potential injury and roster issues. And, it is the dawn of a new season. We're right on the cusp, and it's time to go through all this. No time better than the present.
I definitely agree with that, man. 100%. We'll dive right into it. The offense always comes first, and we're going to go right into the biggest key of this team. And we know, obviously, Sean McVay is going to have to get better, as far as like his red zone efficiency, like the little things that need some tuning up after 11-5 season. But the biggest one of them all is Jared Goff's year 3. He really thrived at the end of his second season. He started off, he was kind of, showed some flashes, but ultimately looked a little slow here and there, especially in the Redskins game. But then, he came back in the 49ers game, and then the Seahawks and Jaguars, he was a little babied. But then after, the bye, Sean McVay really turned him and the rest of the offense loose, and they didn't look back until really the Falcons game, and that wasn't really much of Jared's fault. So Jared, with no preseason, is stepping right into week 1 of the season as the Rams franchise quarterback with no real question marks, not like they were last year, coming off 0-7 rookie season. So, Joe, on my side, I just see Jared Goff finishing as a top 10 quarterback this season. I'll be quite honest. I think he continues to perform. And I don't, some guys, when they hook on to the right coach, things just are magic for them. And then they go and they get their money and they leave and then they're exposed. I think Jared Goff has a lot of talent. And I think, that also helps his case. But having somebody like Sean McVay with him, I think, also really adds to it. So overall, Joe, I think he's in for a really impressive year 3. I would say he might even flirt with the top 5 standing this season. He did at the end of last season. I just see, another year in this offense, more mastery, more efficiency, more growth. I mean, he's only, 24 he's going to be, October 14th, I believe. And, I just see, the addition of Brandon Cooks, hopefully the emergence of, somebody in that tight end room, and there's just more weapons to go around. Plus, Todd Gurley, once again, as of last year, Todd Gurley has now kind of set himself up as the best running back in the league, and he's definitely getting paid like it. So that wasn't the case last year, before the year started. So I think a lot of things are kind of settling in for Goff going into his 3rd year. But, I've kind of said my point. What do you think?
Well, it's funny that this is the first topic of this podcast because actually I think it's the most important topic. I mean, I think this entire season, the pivotal player for this franchise, the pivotal player for this team is Jared Goff. And, certainly last year he proved that he's an NFL quarterback. Certainly he answered the critics, after that 0-7 start and how awful he looked in the last year of the Fisher era, certainly proved that he's an NFL quarterback. But I don't think he's proved he's a top 10 quarterback. I think, there's still some inconsistencies. I mean, I think the thing that you love about him last year is that, he put up a fairly productive season without turning the ball over. The Rams were the best team in the NFL in terms of interception percentage. And so I think if he's able to continue that while being a little bit more consistent, now that Brandon Cook's part of the offense, if he's able to, maybe cut out those 3 to 5 kind of weird mistakes he makes per game, if he's able to become, continue the evolution, improve as much from year 2 to year 3 as he did from year 1 to year 2, I think you're right. I think he becomes a top 10 quarterback. The Rams become a legitimate Super Bowl contender because they have the type of quarterback that can win them games in January. But I do think the biggest question mark about this team is the ceiling. How much ceiling is there left for Jared Goff? How much better can he be? If he's able to evolve and have another big improvement cycle in year 3, then this team is going to be able to live up to, every expectation. They'll have but if he's, if we saw the best that he could be last year, then I think, Rams fans and the NFL kind of, in general is going to be disappointed. I think this is the pivotal player on this team. Just how good can Jared Goff be? Is he the guy that's going to win you the Super Bowl? And it's a shame, but that's the way that this is, and that's the way the NFL is. It's all about the quarterback, and certainly the front office was proven to be correct that this was a first round talent. But for a first overall quarterback to be a good pick, he's almost got to win a Super Bowl. So, I think in the next, especially now when this is a team that's put all the cards on the table, they've traded draft picks, they've paid money, they've capped themselves out. This is a team that has pushed all the chips into the middle of the table, and that flop card is Jared Goff. And I don't have an answer for you. The only thing that's going to give us an answer on this subject, the most important subject of the year, is January. So let's go, baby. That is the opinion. That's laying it on the line. That's the truth. I don't think anybody knows right now. You can make predictions. There's people that believe. There's people that don't believe. But we won't know until January.
Yeah, no, I absolutely I agree with that. I think really what it comes down to is if Jared Goff continues to get better, the thing with him is that I don't know how good he can be, and that, in a lot of ways, that's a good thing. I think, people are so quick to put him into that category where he's a Matt Ryan or an Eli Manning. I've said that repeatedly, where they've already set his ceiling. But, this is a kid that a lot of people were talking about coming out of Cal as by far the best quarterback in that draft. I had Wentz, but, my point is that I feel like the 0-7 season, his first, season, that clouded a lot of judgment around the league as far as fans and media. And I just, whether it's fair or not, I don't think it's accurate. And I think that you'll continue to see, Jared, climb up the mountaintop. I just don't know how far. And I think that's really the fun thing about it, because, he might not be, a Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers, a Peyton Manning, but regardless, who needs to know if he ends up, thriving with this offense and doesn't, look back? If he can just continue to grow, the Rams have put pieces around him for, the foreseeable future. I mean, Cooks is locked up, Woods is locked up, Kupp is around for a bit, before his rookie deal ends, and, you have Todd Gurley, and I just think, looking at that, once they get him, locked up, whether that's this year or next year or the year after, he's just going to have those pieces around him. So you can cross that box off with the cohesion and the, being on the same page, because, unless they have a major shift in the receiver room or they change running backs all of a sudden, Goff has these guys for a while. And I think, that's the key to be able to grow with these guys. And, just the fact, again, Jared Goff's 24, he's already gone to a playoff game, and he played better than the quarterback that played against him. Now...
Did he, though? He did?
I think he did.
Well, who made the game-winning throw? The game-ending throw?
I mean,
come on.
Let's be real here. Matt Ryan, he did not play that well.
Neither did Jared Goff.
I think, here's my thing with that, because I think
I don't want to. We don't need to get. We're talking about 2018. We don't have to drudge it up and really get into 2000. That one game. But he would. Yeah.
I'll say one thing. In that game, there were 2 touchdowns that were dropped by a receiver that's no longer on the roster. So, yeah.
Ooh, I'm looking at the numbers. Actually, it was pretty even.
He put the ball in Higbee's hands and, dropped touchdown on 4th down, and Sammy Watkins dropped a catch after he was clearly held in the end zone by Deion Jones, but then when he broke free, even though the flag wasn't called, he still has to catch that ball. He's wide open, hits him in the chest, drops it, and then, the beautiful throw down the sideline, Goff puts it right on the money to him, and it's only where he can get it, because Alfred had great coverage, but it just hits him right in the hands and he drops it. But Cooks is on the roster now, so I don't imagine that's going to happen if he's in that situation. And if he does, then you can come right back at me and and say, told you so or whatever. But no, I think, we covered it pretty well on Goff. A lot of excitement there, but, you do have to be wary, because if this is Jared Goff, what we saw last year, if that's it for the long haul, that's not a bad quarterback. I don't know if that's a guy that can win you a Super Bowl, like you said. That's not a bad quarterback, though. So I think if you end up with what Jared Goff was last year, I think you can be, good with that, with the team around him right now. But as, the tough decisions start having to be made and you have to pay him, you kind of ask yourself, can you? Can you afford to, let a Michael Brockers, LaMarcus Joyner, a John Johnson go in hopes to pay somebody that you don't feel can necessarily carry the team, and all of a sudden you start losing the guys around you, and your team isn't as strong as it was before, which then kind of puts him more under the crosshairs. It's kind of that thing.
That's really more of a question for the 2019-2020 season preview. I mean, Jared Goff's the quarterback this year. What he does is going to determine what this season is, and how he performs will you'll have more information about whether or not they should sign him long term and how much they should give him and what he's willing to take. I think all those things are variables that are going to go into that decision. But again, this is about the 2018 season preview, so we'll cross those bridges when we have to.
That sounds good to me. Now moving on, Todd Gurley. Should have won MVP last year in my mind, but he didn't. He won Offensive Player of the Year, which is the next best thing. Coming off an Offensive Player of the Year award, is he in for another one this season? Because, he's the best running back in the league aside from maybe, Le'Veon Bell or David Johnson. Johnson's coming off injury. Bell might not even play. So that would leave him, and then I think, obviously Ezekiel Elliott and Alvin Kamara and, the emergence of, potential Rookie of the Year in Saquon Barkley and Leonard Fournette and Kareem Hunt. All those guys, pose a threat for that. But regardless, it doesn't matter if he gets the hardware or not. Will the Rams see that type of production out of him this season? Because I do think his yards might go down as far as, receiving wise due to the emergence of, the addition of Brandon Cooks and the potential emergence of the tight end room. But I do think he'll get more on the ground. I think his touchdowns are going to be right around what they were last year as far as, rushing. So, what are your thoughts on that? Does Todd Gurley have a better season than last year or a worse?
I don't think it's fair to ask him to have a better season than he had. I think it's possible that he goes out there and puts up 2,500 yards. But in terms of touchdowns, in terms of impact, in terms of what he did as a pass blocker, I mean, really, I think I've made this point with you before. Aaron Donald's Aaron Donald. He's one of the most unique players in the NFL. He deserves his contract. But I think the player the Rams can afford to lose the most, and certainly that was the case last year, was Todd Gurley. Maybe with the introduction of John Kelly, maybe that room kind of could survive it a little bit more than they could have last year. But I think it's hard to ask Todd to go for more than 2K. I think anything over 2,000 yards is gravy. I think the production is going to continue from what we saw last year. I'm actually interested to see what creative ways Coach McVay is going to use to get him available even more this year. Certainly teams are going to be will have spent the offseason trying to find ways to limit his impact on games, and I think that's another kind of significant question entering this fall. But I don't think it's fair to kind of ask him to do any more than he did last year. I don't really expect him to hit those numbers again, although I certainly think he could. But really, maybe with a little bit more Kelly, maybe he's an even more productive player on a per down basis because maybe he'll finally be able to rest just a little bit and they'll be able to spell him. Certainly now that he's paid, he's got to continue to produce. He's got to live up to that money now.
He definitely does. I actually came out with a 2018 season prediction piece on Downtown Rams. It was kind of something I just threw together, all my predictions of the whole league, and one of the things I wrote on there was that Todd Gurley was going to win Offensive Player of the Year for the second straight year, and he was going to flirt. I'm not saying he would, but he was going to flirt with that CJ2K, yards from scrimmage single season record, which is 2,500, I believe, something like that. So I don't think he'll necessarily pass it. There's just too much there. But I do think he'll flirt with it and get relatively close. Now, the same thing comes into effect this year as it did last year. Todd Gurley could be in a lot of games where the Rams blow out their opponent. And now they have a better defense. And now they have John Kelly, and they have, John Kelly with Malcolm Brown, Justin Davis, where why would the Rams chance, using Todd Gurley at all in those types of situations, especially now that they've invested money in him? So that's also something to keep in mind. I think if you were to just, let him go and we turned injuries off and the Rams just used him all season long, like Ezekiel Elliott's used in Dallas, yes, I do believe Todd Gurley could break the single season record easily. for the yards from scrimmage. But, factoring in everything with the fact, the Rams are probably going to have a couple blowouts on the schedule, having, drafting John Kelly, and, I don't see it. I see him flirting with it, but I don't see him absolutely breaking it. I don't know if, what you think on that, but I'm still shocked that Chris Johnson still has that record. I think that's more surprising to me than if Todd were to break it.
Sure. I think that his mileage is going to be determined a lot by how well does John Kelly pass block, how well does Malcolm Brown pass block. Part of the reason he played so much last year is because they couldn't afford to take him off the field in passing situations, which is ironic considering the way the previous administration used him. So, we'll see. I don't know much about John Kelly as a pass blocker yet. So, I think that's how he's got to get himself on the field. But, we'll see. I don't expect him to produce any more than he did last year. I don't think you can ask him to produce any more than he did last year. And now that they've invested in him, they need tread on that tire for the next 3-4 years.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. So, definitely something to keep in mind. And regardless, I think Rams fans will be happy with whatever number 30 does this season, because I don't think you're going to see, that 2016 season out of him ever again, quite frankly. But moving on, we have the big three to talk about. And the big three is Brandon Cooks, Robert Woods, and Cooper Kupp. Now, this guy has been deemed crazy, but this guy believes that the big three are going to combine for 3,000 yards receiving.
Where are all these yards going to come from? 3,000 yards receiving, and Todd Gurley is going to approach 2,500 yards. They are going to be a juggernaut offensively if all these takes kind of come together for you, bud.
And I don't even think they'd still have the offensive yards record, right? Because the Peyton Manning-led Broncos were more explosive than that.
Really?
Yeah. Well, they had Decker, they had Demaryius
How'd
Thomas,
that team do?
Emmanuel Sanders.
That team do anything in the playoffs?
Well, Julius Thomas. But you get my point, though.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, I mean, we'll see. We'll see how explosive this offense is.
I think Cooks is going to be absolutely deadly. And the crazy thing is, well, it's not crazy, because I know I make a lot of takes. I get some right. I nail some draft picks here and some drafts.
You do nail some draft picks. Yeah,
and then
you do.
There are times where I completely miss. Like my MVP this season, do you know who I predicted for MVP? Deshaun Watson.
For last year?
Do you know who I...
This year?
This year.
Wow.
Do you know who I thought was the 13th best quarterback in that class? Deshaun Watson.
Oh, wow.
So, I guess really what I'm saying is my point is that originally I got home from work and I saw the Cooks trade and I was pissed. Because I was like, how do you go from, this Odell Beckham Jr. thing, which was totally real and they were really interested, and obviously, later, information came out about the Giants and wanting 2 first-rounders and upping their offer. And I totally get that. But at first, I was livid because I just didn't feel like Brandon Cooks was like Odell Beckham and Antonio Brown, like DeAndre Hopkins. And, I felt like that's the value that the Rams were giving up for him. But then, when I really thought about it, Brandon Cooks is in the best situation he's been in, and he's been in 2 awesome situations playing with Drew Brees and Tom Brady. I think what you saw, I personally believe that, the Patriots lost that Super Bowl for, a couple of reasons, but one of the big ones, they lost Cooks early in that game. That
was one of the weirdest, him going walkabout there, that weird, him getting ear-holed. He was doing some weird wheeling thing. It was really strange.
It was strange. It was like he was changing direction, going upfield, and then it's just one of those things like the tackle just it kind of jumped off the screen for you. All of a sudden, Malcolm Jenkins is in his face mask, and but
Yeah.
That
was a big blow.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
it definitely was a big blow in that Super. But I do think Cooks is an improvement. Is that I just I think the guy you said a lot of names in comparing to Brandon Cooks, and I think that I think really this I think what Coach McVay is looking at is a player that can get you the sort of reduction that Jackson got him in Washington, and I think he's filling that role, and I think that he gives this this offense kind of what they wanted, what they were looking for out of Sammy Watkins, and it's certainly an improvement. The thing with Brandon Cooks is that this is a guy you have to trust Sean McVay, because obviously Sean McVay wanted him the previous year, didn't have the first round pick to trade for him, and they jumped all over him this year, and so there's a reason why Sean McVay wants him. I think that's the best reason out of any reason for a Rams fan to get excited about Brandon Cook, simply because your leader wants this guy. This is a guy that he's betting a first round pick and however millions of dollars guaranteed, and it's a big bet, and it certainly means that Sean McVay believes a lot in him. So I think who am I to say that it's a bet that's not going to pay off if everything's come up aces so far for Sean McVay. Why wouldn't this bet be a winner too?
Yeah, and I think it's another one of those tales where, if you get the right player in the right scheme, good things tend to happen. So you have a talented player that's not in the right scheme, I still think you're going to get good things to happen, but he just seems like he's in the right scheme with McVay, and just he's around the right receivers. I think all these guys complement each other. They're all different. Cooper Kupp is the biggest receiver of this big three. He's 6'2". He's that guy that I know everyone wants to stick in the slot, but I view all three of these guys as interchangeable, which, leads to matchup issues. You talk about the idea of just, mixing it up, having Cooks in the slot or having him on the outside and, Cooper Kupp in the slot or Woods it doesn't really matter. Being able to have that interchangeable personnel is very useful. And what I think ultimately is going to happen is I think you're going to see Cooks have an elite type of year, but then I think you have Cooper Kupp coming off a really good rookie season. I think he's only going to continue to improve upon that. And then I think, I've said it over and over again, I think the Rams got an absolute steal in Robert Woods. I just don't think the Bills knew what they had in a run-heavy offense. I just didn't really feel like he was used to the best of his ability. And so I think what you saw in his first playoff game, he really emerged. I mean, he took over, when Goff needed that key, catch. Woods was down. He made that. He laid out for that huge grab with Desmond Trufant on the coverage, and then, the tiptoe on the sideline catch, and he was big in that game. They didn't win, but I think he had like 9 catches for 142 yards. So, look for him to really carry that into the, next season. I think, obviously with the, the connection with Goff, I think that's only going to improve everything. But I think this is a big season for all three of them. And I think, Cooks will end up with probably the best season, but don't sleep on Robert Woods. I think Woods can end up with another really impressive season, and unfortunately, like last year, it was kind of, he didn't get a chance to get to that 1,000-yard mark because of the injury. I think this year he gets it, and barring injury, of course, but I think he's going to be even better this year.
Yeah, I think what makes them great is the fact that you've got, you could spread the field with the three of them, and it's really hard to defend, to cover all three of them, and you let the opposing defense dictate where the ball goes. That's what this offense does. And so I think, that's one reason why it's all going to be balanced. I think it's interesting. Obviously, the Rams used, almost as much three receiver personnel as any team in the NFL last year. And so, we'll see if that continues this year or if this offense evolves at all.
Yeah, we'll definitely see that. I saw an interesting tweet. I forget who it was by, but one guy actually reported that out of all the NFL teams he talked with, every NFL team made it a point to study Sean McVay and Rams offensive tape. And I think, they have it, they're right in the crosshairs. So, adding Cooks and, replacing Sammy Watkins with him, and then, adding a John Kelly, adding new weapons can't hurt as far as creativity and keeping other, teams on their toes. So I think that was also pretty crucial and key. And the other thing that's crucial and key, we'll move right on to the tight ends. The Rams kept 3 tight ends. They kept 2 on the practice squad in Tamarick Hemingway and Henry Career-Coble. But the 3 tight ends on the roster, Tyler Higbee, Gerald Everett, and Johnny Munt, which was a little surprising that they kept Munt. I like that they did. I think they really like his receiving ability, but he definitely needs to get better as a blocker. I felt as though Gerald Everett not being able to really get in during the preseason was kind of unfortunate, seeing that this guy is somebody that, at the start of last season looked like that deep threat that was really going to help the Rams, but then he slowly, faded out of the playbook and out of the offense. Tyler Higbee in year 3, I mean, you've said it, all off season, this is put up or shut up time for Tyler Higbee, because, this guy's had his chance, and he's going to tell us this year what he is. The growth and being around Jared Goff and this offense, he's really got no excuse to this point. So whatever he does this season, it's pretty safe to say he's going to be that player, moving forward. But with this tight end class, it all comes down to, can they find that one guy that's going to give them the NFL starter level production that is, in my opinion, needed?
Yeah, I think one underrated aspect of demoting Hemingway for Munt is, it's probably not where I should start on this subject, but I think, again, I've said for a couple years now that this is a roster that needs, a veteran that needs some blocking. I think they're even now worse from a blocking perspective. And, I think they really need Tyler Higbee to improve, not just as a receiver, as somebody who you can trust on third down and in the red zone, but they need him to really improve as a blocker. I think that, because you're not going to get it from Everett, who's more of a move guy, more of a receiver. And I think Munt is more of a receiver. He's kind of undersized, I think, for a tight end. So I think maybe that out of their entire roster, a blocking tight end is something that, is maybe a hole on this team. And, so they're going to have to, obviously they don't think they need it. They could probably use, Noteboom as do some unbalanced line stuff, or use Noteboom as a blocking tight end, or figure out something else. But we haven't seen it. We haven't seen any other, them do anything like that yet. But I do think that, I'm still, I think Rams fans shouldn't forget the fact that, Gerald Everett was one of the best players, on this team during OTAs. Certainly, it was, had amongst the most buzz among any player. He certainly could be a player who's kind of a breakthrough player on the team. But they need somebody, whether it's Higbee, whether it's Everett, whether it's somebody who's not on the roster yet. They still need some sort of production, some sort of breakthrough player at that tight end position. I think that's the only hole really offensively. Yeah, it's, that the month thing was surprising to me because I don't think I don't think he fills that blocking role. And when you have Gerald Everett, what do you need a third receiving tight end for? Whether I think that the two biggest holes on this offense are that they could potentially improve upon is a backup quarterback and a blocking tight end. And I feel like I've been saying this now for over a year.
They're just not listening to you, Joe.
Yeah, what do I know? They won 11 games last year.
Yeah, no, I hear you there, but I think this is a team to watch out for at the trade deadline, see if they need anybody. This is the same team that right before the season started last year, they go out and they give a 7th rounder to Washington for Derek Carrier, who I thought was pretty solid in his role, and then of course Greg Olsen also did, and he took him to Oakland. The thing that is interesting about all this is that, you said blocking, and Tyler Eifert's not really a blocking tight end, but that's somebody that they actually offered a 1-year deal to. He decided to stay in Cincinnati, but I haven't gotten over that, and then that whole, the rumor mill with Gronkowski, it just makes you wonder if, what is going on in that room, because like you said, they have 3 receiving tight ends. I think, Higbee has gotten better as a blocker, and I think that's probably why. But I think Hemingway at this point is probably a better blocker than a receiver, which is pretty interesting because he was really knocked for his blocking ability coming out of college. So his development as a blocking tight end, I think, has really been impressive. As far as the Rams are concerned, they have 2 guys there blocking tight ends, in Krieger Coble and Hemingway on the practice squad. So I think they're kind of just, it's their way of having those guys on speed dial if they need them. And it's one of those things that McVay always says, you'll evaluate the film, you'll go over it, and you'll decide, based off that. So I think that they're willing to go into this season not thinking that this is going to cripple them, I guess, and if it happens to be an issue, I think that's when they'll correct it. But the Tyler Eifert interest for me is just something that teams tell you something when they're doing stuff like that and they're offering players like that, they're telling you stuff, even though they didn't sign him, it's something to monitor. But I think we've pretty much wrapped up the tight ends, the running backs, the wide receivers, and the quarterback position. So before we leave this offense, the offensive line plays 17 games last year together, which it was crazy. Being a Rams fan, that just doesn't happen. So that was a little shocking. But
they didn't play week 16, but yeah, they could have if they wanted to.
They played the playoffs. So, it's the weird thing. The weird thing with this is that, I'm not saying Jamon Brown is an end-all be-all type of piece, but so you're telling me after 17 straight games playing together, now Jamon Brown gets suspended for the first 2 games, and that is what separates them from play. So it wasn't even an injury. It's going to be Austin Blythe in at right guard. There was a chance at one point that Joe Noteboom was going to get the nod, but I think Austin, he did fill in for John Sullivan at one point in the season. So I think they just felt more comfortable going with him, and rightfully so. So I don't mind that pick. I don't mind that move at all. But how do you see this offensive unit thriving? This offensive line.
Oh, it's just all about health. I think if they're able to continue to be on the field, I think they showed last year that they can thrive together. I think you wonder if they'll be as good this year, because when you look at last year, certainly, Whitworth was kind of, having a renaissance season, but maybe toward the end of it, maybe he got a little banged up toward the end of the year. Certainly, John Sullivan had some injury issues. He was the one guy that was really kind of, dealing with some things. And I think Roger Saffold had, really one of the best years of his career. And so, when you put, and Havenstein obviously earned his money, because he gets paid, before the season starts. So, I think my worry with the offensive line is that they can't replicate last year's production because they're a year older, and it's hard for that offensive line, for any offensive line, to stay healthy the way that they have for any year, never mind more than a year. So I think it certainly was imperative for them to go out and get some young talent at that position in terms of Noteboom and Allen, and we'll see what happens now that Jamil Demby is kind of in purgatory as we await if they're able to stash him on the practice squad or not. But yeah, I think potentially, it was smart to bring the gang back together, because certainly, they did the job last year, and you would hope that they do the job again this year. But I also think they did a good job of getting insurance in case they weren't able to do it, because certainly the guys, you only had to watch that Week 16 game against San Francisco when they had, all the backups playing to know that, what they had in terms of depth at the offensive line position was not going to be good enough. All those guys have now since moved on. Besides, Brown was the only starter who played against San Francisco. The rest of them were all the backups. So, I guess Blythe is still back. But, certainly they moved on from everybody else who played. And certainly they did not play well in the preseason. Part of the reason why I think Sean Mannion did not have a good preseason, because the line did not play good in front of him. And I think, it's another reason why Williams and, that whole gang have all been moved on from. So we'll see what type of professional offensive lineman Joe Noteboom is in the NFL. So I think he's going to get his shot this year, unfortunately, because I don't expect the luck to continue. Somebody's going to get banged up at some point. But certainly you hope that the line is in one piece when they get in the postseason, and you want to see what type of fist they can make of this thing when they're at full strength.
We definitely will see, what's up with the offensive line come postseason, but I think you really hit it on the head. I think really it comes down to injuries. If they all stay healthy, you have to imagine that, if they're any bit like last year, that's going to be enough to win football games. They don't have, and this is the good thing about the Rams' offensive line, they don't have that glaring weak link. You would make the argument that it's Jamon Brown, and you'd probably be right. But, it's not a glaring weak link, and they've already, put in place, different methods of, shoring that up if, say, Jamon Brown doesn't end up getting, re-signed going into the 2019 season. So, I just have to touch on it real quick. I don't know why the Rams got rid of Jamil Demby. I don't understand. If they have a move coming, fine, but that same move would have to be done pretty soon. The season starts. It starts today, as it's 12:04 on the East Coast. But
yeah, baby.
But for the Rams, it starts tomorrow. Or I'm screwing you up, Joe. But here in New York, it would start tomorrow. Monday. So I guess my question is why you keep 3 quarterbacks on the roster on a team this talented, and you now have 7 offensive linemen that you carry into the next game. And you have Whitworth, who's getting older, Sullivan, who has a history of injuries, Saffold has a history of injuries. Havenstein has dealt with some injuries, and Austin Blythe is he's starting his first game at right guard. I believe he's only started.
He's a replacement level player.
Yeah,
he's a replacement level player. He's a backup, or he's a
I
swing
like
guy.
the pickup of Evan Boehm, but like I just don't like the idea of you drafted this guy. We heard Les Snead talk about him. What he saw at the Senior Bowl, the guy out of Maine. Like, I just don't.
Oh, he looked great.
I don't understand how you let this guy go and put him out there for the rest of the league to claim him. I know no one claimed, the guys that were cut for some reason from the Rams, except for Aaron Neary, who was recently waived by the Browns. But I just don't like this at all. I didn't like the Traven Howard waiver. I didn't understand that. He still has not reverted to IR, so that's kind of confusing to me. But I don't know. I don't like it, Joe. I think you keep 8. That's the number I had them keeping, and I like that number of offensive linemen. I'm hoping they bring Aaron Neary back or promote Evan Boehm, who has 9 starts in his career worth of experience. But, I don't really know what they're doing. So I'm just going to leave it at that.
I think, to me, I think if I'm going to look at that, and I think that's, I think it's okay to say that you texted me and you were wondering why keep 3 quarterbacks and only 7 offensive linemen. And I think the only real answer that you can speculate with is that they're not comfortable with Sean Mannion. But the way I look at this is if Brandon Allen is the starting quarterback for this football team, what's your season going to look like? I mean, to me, I think Sean Mannion can have success with what's around him offensively. I think it is probably hard for them to carry 3 rookie offensive linemen. They probably should have tried to sneak. Well, maybe this was the plan the entire time to sneak Jamil Demby onto the practice squad. Because if you look at it, right, the entire league has gone through. They've cut down to 53. Then they've cycled through. Everybody else shuffled through everything, and now it's about to begin. It's right when they cut Demby right when everybody else was basically had a locked in 46, a locked in 53, and now it's hard. You'd have to tear up some plans for anybody to kind of make a move. There's probably a team out there that has a spot on their 53 for Demby. It may or may not be a team that scouted him and liked him like the Rams did. I think that's kind of the crapshoot aspect of it. But I think maybe they might have looked at themselves and said, hey, it's not smart for us to go into a season with 3 rookie offensive linemen backing up our starters. How are we going to sneak Jamil Demby onto the practice squad? And maybe the only way to do that is wait till everybody's cut down to the 53. Everybody's cycled through everybody else's cuts, gotten comfortable with what they have at a 46 and a 53, and then try to sneak him out while everybody else is kind of worried about, week 1. So maybe it's the only way they thought that they could get Demby on the practice squad. We will find out tomorrow or Monday morning if they were successful. But certainly it's funny that, Rams fans kind of holding their breaths over, this draft pick.
Yeah, it's also funny because he was the 6th round pick, and you kind of, I don't know, with the way the Rams have drafted, you kind of don't want any of these picks to go away. I just think that, a lot of Rams fans, including myself, weren't really sure about letting Ewan Price walk. Undrafted rookie free agents. I was really, uneasy about, now that you've basically come out and said you are waiving Traven Howard, I just don't know how Like you don't even practice squad Tigre Scales. So, there are, different guys that I think, later in the draft or undrafted that contribute. I mean, right now, as the league stands, the UDFAs make up more 53-man rosters than any other classification of player. So,
Sure. I mean, there's a lot more of them.
Yeah, no,
that's
absolutely. But, it's getting, you have to find that later round undrafted talent. I think the Rams have found that. And, in Demby's case, I think fans aren't ready to just watch, even though they had 11, picks. I don't think they're ready to just watch guys that they, cheered for when they were drafted and cheered for when they were playing meaningless preseason games go. And, I think that's what that comes down to.
I will say this as somebody who saw Jamil Demby practice in OTAs and work, all those camps in the offseason. He looked like an NFL player. He looked like he could do it. I liked the way he looked. And he was only just beginning. So, I do think it would be a blow if they lost him this weekend. We'll see.
I definitely agree with you. I think they're taking a risk. I think they plan on bringing him back, but it's a bigger risk, But moving on, before we go into the defense, just going to touch really quickly. I have 3 emerging X factors, and you tell me if I'm right or not, Joe. I have Pharoh Cooper, who I believe is going to have a bigger role on the offensive side of the ball. And I believe that, I think he's really going to learn from that dreadful performance in the playoffs. I think he's only going to get better. And then John Kelly, the 6th-round pick, that was your guy you really handpicked. Before, we did a little draft preview, and you were really big on Kelly. Kelly's looked like the best running back in preseason. And, I think he's definitely going to be an X factor. I think by the end of the season, coming down to the 15, week 16, week 17 playoff area, I think you'll see people wearing his 42, and I think you'll see him on third downs. I think the Rams will be comfortable using him and possibly using Gurley in the backfield in a shotgun formation with, John Kelly out at, wide out or vice versa. I think you'll see him more often. And then Joseph Noteboom, who, people assume that he won't play unless an injury happens, but, I just don't think that right guard position's locked in, and I think the easiest way to get him acclimated for the game and get his feet wet is by putting him in an NFL game in a guard role. You're not the guy, you're not the end-all, be-all. If you get beat, it's not like it's going to, you're not going to lose the game necessarily coming off the edge. You're not going up against a Von Miller or, a Joey Bosa or anything like that. So, I think guard might be the best option. But, Joe, what do you think about that?
I think, I'll agree with you to varying degrees on your 3 emerging X factors. I think Joe Noteboom is he's obviously going to be a key guy as a swing guard tackle. I expect him to impact this team this year on both situations. I think conversely, I think, John Kelly might be able to give, like I said earlier, might be able to give Todd Gurley a little bit more of a blow, than maybe what he's had in years past. I think I don't know how much you really want John Kelly to play because it means that Todd Gurley's not on the field. And then in terms of Pharoh Cooper, I think Coach McVay was asked about it today. I think, he didn't really answer the question, but I think the expectations for Pharoh Cooper is that he's going to inherit that kind of Tavon Austin jet sweep action sort of thing. You saw a little bit in the preseason, him receiving the ball a little bit. And so I think, I think you're going to get a little bit out of him. I think really, if I was going to list, I would include Noteboom if I was going to give you 3 X factors. I still think that, the most important X factor for this offense is going to be some sort of red zone target. I still don't think the starting lineup does not have an impact red zone player. I think they lost their best red zone player last year in Sammy Watkins. And so, one of Gerald Everett or Josh Reynolds has got to pop. The sad thing about this situation is that both of them basically lost their training camp to injury. Everett to the shoulder and Reynolds to the ankle. But certainly Reynolds, neither was on the injury report this week, so they must be back and ready to go. So I do expect, even though this is, the three receivers are like the three amigos, and they're all three of them, according to you, are going to be 1,000-yard players. I think they absolutely need Everett and or Reynolds to produce, especially in the red zone. And that's how I think both of those guys are more important players to this offense than either Cooper or Kelly.
Yeah,
this year.
I can definitely see that, and for the long haul, obviously, remains to be seen. But no, I can definitely I can roll with that. With the defensive side of the ball, it's not going to be as long as the offense because, quite frankly, I think you have more questions on offense than defense. I think it's crazy because how great of an offense they were last year, but I think it's just
and 10 of the 11 starters returned too. That's the irony of it.
Yeah, but it's crazy because it's just, you would think, the offense from the perspective of, you're looking at an offense that has the cohesion, and it has, they've all gelled together, aside from like a Brandon Cooks. And they've only add to the offense. They've really kept everything intact. With the defense, there was a lot of turnover, and yet I think there's less questions to be answered because I think they upgraded in key areas. I mean, the simple thing is we haven't seen them play yet, besides that preseason, not even, a first quarter, But, I mean, you have to imagine that putting Ndamukong Suh, Michael Brockers, and Aaron Donald, on the same line is not going to backfire in any way as long as they stay healthy. I know there's always somebody out there. Well, the Rams just they made a lot of these moves and it's just not going to work. It's quite simple. If Ndamukong Suh plays with that intensity he's played throughout his career. I know he's 31. But 31, he's still, I think he's at the end of his prime, but he's still in his prime. Aaron Donald, who's the best defensive player in the league, and Michael Brockers, who's probably the most underrated defensive player in the league. So when you put those guys on the same line, well, I think you get a lot out of that, and opens up more opportunities for linebackers. It opens up opportunities for the corners and safeties. Just everybody wins. I think you're going to see a lot more coverage sacks because the secondary is also going to be helping out guys like Aaron Donald and, the edge guys as well. So in the past, because the Rams, they haven't really had the talent in the secondary like they have this year. I mean, we love Trumaine Johnson and all. I was a big fan of his. I was a big fan of, watching Janoris Jenkins before he left. But what it comes down to is the Rams have, significantly upgraded the position. And like I said, I think you're going to see more coverage sacks. I think just this team is they're going to be deadly as a defensive team. And the Rams, they handpick certain players based on their quality to generate more turnovers. The offensive firepower they got last year, if they had a defense like they do this year, I think that, they would have been on the field more. They would have been able to probably win a couple more games. I think it cannot be understated, how important this new Wade Phillips defense is going to be to this season for the 2018 LA Rams. But, Joe, I don't really know what else to say about the big three in Donald, Suh, and Brockers. So do you want to just go right into the linebackers?
I mean, I think that the cool thing about the big three is that we haven't seen them yet. we don't know what it's gonna look like. We don't know. I think they're gonna be moved around. I think you're gonna see some Sue, obviously, in the middle. I think you're gonna see some Brockers in the middle. I think they're gonna be moving around. I think they're gonna be having a good time. The fact that everything we think about this defensive line is in our heads. We haven't seen them together yet. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what that looks like. And I think it's going to mean, a sort of pass rush that Rams fans haven't seen in the past. I think it's going to mean, a heightened run stopping ability that, certainly they didn't have last year. And it's going to anchor what potentially could be a defensive unit that could be better than, I think, last year's offensive unit, which led the league in scoring. I think it's certainly the potential for something special, and I think they got some backups there that are going to help them too.
They definitely do. I think Ethan Westbrook's, the way he was able to play in preseason. They're definitely excited about him. John Franklin Myers, Sebastian Joseph Day. Tanzel Smart in year 2, although I wasn't a huge fan of the way he played in preseason. But, they have a good rotation. They have the best, front 3 I've seen. And with the linebackers, I think that's your biggest question. And they have a lot of young talent there, with Micah Kaiser, obviously, but Corey Littleton, somebody that filled in for the injured Mark Barron, who is injured and probably won't play, Monday. He filled in for him in the game to basically, if the Rams won, they were going to win the NFC West. It was the clincher. And, Corey Littleton came to play in that game, picked off Mariota early on and had a sack and forced a fumble, and he had a bunch of blocked kicks earlier in the year, so he has kind of paid his dues to get into this position, former UDFA out of Washington, and I'm really excited to see him. I do think it's going to be a breakout season for him. I think he could end up being a Pro Bowler. I know he was up for the Pro Bowl last year as a special teamer. Probably should have got it, but he was snubbed, and I think this year he'll make a run for it, especially with the Rams' popularity growing now. With the Rams winning football games, as long as they continue that winning and they stay relevant, I think Littleton has a shot. And I think it's even going to be better because people just don't see this coming. Unless you're a Rams fan or you're a Washington fan, many people just don't realize how good Corey Littleton has been for them in limited opportunities. And I think, what it came down to is the Rams, at the end of the year, they evaluated the film and they saw, Littleton gave them the best chance at linebacker, and they decided to move on from Ogletree after giving him that extension. I mean, Littleton's probably going to end up being that leader and replacing Ogletree.
What's really interesting is, I do really value Littleton as a playmaker. I think he was obviously fantastic on special teams, deserved a Pro Bowl nod last year. I think that's going to be a sneaky little impact there, not having him on special teams as much. It's really fascinating that they moved him right into that green dot role, calling it, having the coach the communication device, calling the defensive plays, sets, and but the one thing is, I think he's a better, like you mentioned the interception in Tennessee, and I think he's better in coverage than he is as a run stopper. And so I'm surprised that, maybe he's playing the Mike rather than the Mo, because they still have Barron. I think Corey Littleton's probably Mark Barron's eventual successor, perhaps. If you look at maybe what they're going to do long term at the linebacker position. But to me, I think Corey Littleton, if they think he can play the Mike, I think he can also play the other inside linebacker position, and I think you're going to see him play potentially both those positions this year. But certainly an exciting playmaker, and And, when you compare him to what Alec Ogletree was, he's cheap. He's on a rookie deal, and he doesn't have that big contract. And I think it made so much sense to have a more productive player on a significantly less contract. And I think that was one of the keystone moves of the offseason, was getting rid of that Ogletree contract, being able to go cheap at the linebacker position with players on rookie deals. And I think that opened up them to a whole new world to make some of these other deals at some of these other positions, especially on defense up front and in the secondary. I think an underrated aspect of Corey Littleton was somebody who couldn't even practice when he was a UDFA because he couldn't join the team until after he had graduated, after Washington had finished classes, and he wasn't around. He was like this phantom guy. Who is this Corey Littleton guy? We haven't even seen him in OTAs. And then when training camp came, we're like, all right, now we know why, they waited around so long for this guy to show, because he can play and he has played. And now he's he's one of, the more underrated, more important players on this defense.
You know how like John Gruden, calling the ESPN games, he had his Gruden grinders. I need my own like Jake something, because that, very well, Corey Littleton's been my dude. Like I've been a fan of him for a while. I mean, his cousin follows me on Twitter. Like I think people know I really like Corey Littleton. It was funny. I got a lot of flack for putting him on the 53 his rookie year. Like, how does somebody that missed all of OTAs get on? And I was like, look. Right. He couldn't because he had to graduate, and I like him. I like his. It's funny, the Rams really haven't used him a ton off the edge, but he's somebody that can do that really. Too. He was a solid edge rusher. At Washington, they used him all over, and I wouldn't actually. What's funny? I wonder if he played with. Marcus Peters, now that I think about it. But, I just think, somebody that has the versatility to play, off the edge or, inside back or outside in a 4-3. I think he's a better cover guy than he's given credit for. And,
that's one of the best aspects of who he is. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like, he honestly in coverage is a lot like the way... I don't know if you remember him, but the Rams got this UDFA out of Miami, Ray Armstrong, and they were really big on him because of his ability, as a safety converted to a linebacker. They thought he'd be great in coverage, and he ended up being just a special teamer that, couldn't stop getting those late penalties, and that's ultimately what got him off the team. But it's one of those guys that they were looking for a guy that can, really thrive in coverage, and he wasn't quite what they thought. Littleton, however, wasn't really, I don't want to say he was poor in coverage, but in college he was more of a rusher, and I thought he was pretty solid in run support. He was, I don't remember exactly, I thought he was used a little bit at safety as well, but, he had that kind of frame, like 230 or whatever, where, if you're athletic in college, man, they'll throw you all over the field. He was kind of like that chess piece. And I think, the Rams are really, they found a gem in him. And, you can tell because Wade Phillips and company have changed what they changed their plan. I mean, that's really what you can sum up Corey Littleton as. He is somebody that completely changed the Rams' plan on what they were going to do long term. They gave this guy, he was the first contract extension of their regime, and he must have been so good and eye-popping that the guy that they just made, the first guy of their regime to get contract extended, they trade him away. I know... things change and whatnot, but Littleton has a lot to do with it, and I definitely think he's going to have a really good season.
Nailed it. Let's move it. Let's move on.
So Mark Barron, we talked a little bit about him. Is he going to fall out of this lineup? Because he has a pretty big cap number, and he continues to battle injuries. And it's really unfortunate because this is somebody that can really be that playmaker in the middle, that quick slant. We've seen it before. The quick slant to that speedy slot receiver, and then boom, he meets Mark Barron head on, ball comes flying out, and there you go, there's your turnover. Like, he's somebody that can literally take the ball away from the other team. However, Barron has struggled with injuries, and it goes back to Alabama. He has had lingering injury issues. I know this time it's the ankle. He's had shoulder problems, and a lot of the reason is, the dude hits people for a living. Absolutely hits people, lays the wood. You'd have to imagine you have some shoulder issues with that. But, no, I think, again, really like Barron, and I do think he's a very solid player. I think he's an above-average starter. I don't know how much he fits the 3-4, but because Wade Phillips he runs more of a multiple defense, and like more of a hybrid, I think it works. But, with that being said, cap number's high. He can't stay healthy. Do you see Barron falling out of the starting lineup?
Well, I think we talked about him as a potential, worst case scenario cap casualty this offseason. I think it wasn't 100% that he'd be back this year. I thought they could potentially flush both those inside backers from a year ago and use that cap space in other places. Maybe they didn't feel totally comfortable doing that just because they didn't want to start 100% over at the linebacker position. Barron's the only returning starter. So, maybe that's what kept him around. Maybe he was the best performer at that level last year. But I do think that, if he's not able to come back strong this year, I think there is a chance that this is his last year in a Rams uniform, especially if some of those, they've drafted at that position a lot. If, say, just I think I think it's beginning to look like the future of the Rams at this position is Littleton at Barron's position and Micah Kaiser at the Mike. And I think that's that you could potentially. It's interesting that you're bringing. You brought up Littleton as a potential rush end or rush outside linebacker, because if there's a situation with some injuries, they could move, like you said, they could move Littleton to outside linebacker and pop in Kaiser or pop in Bryce Hager at that Mike position and go with that setup and with Barron there. And so I do think, it's interesting, that they have gone virtual youth at this position, cheap youth, besides Mark Barron. So Mark Barron's the one guy, one of these things doesn't belong. One of these things is, not like the others. And he does kind of stick out like a sore thumb in this linebacker group now, because he is one who's, he's on a higher contract. He's got some experience. He's having some injury problems, where everybody else is young and developing, building, and exciting. It's a position in transition, and maybe that's a transition that's going to mean the end of Mark Barron as a Ram.
Yeah, I could definitely see it, and when a new regime comes in, you do see those cap casualties. You see the moving on of different players. I want to touch a little bit on Micah Kaiser, because he's become a fan favorite virtually overnight. He's somebody that I think everyone really liked coming out of the draft in some facet, but I just want to touch on him because, I want to see, there's a battle with Micah Kaiser. It's internally. It's either short-term value or, versus the long-term value. Is this a guy that is going to be able to play right away? Or is this a guy that the Rams are willing to wait, grow, and have him as the guy, moving forward? I know he's only a 5th-round pick, but, he's another guy you liked. I liked him as well. I don't know if you can say he's not ready to play, because that was one of the glaring things I saw on film, is that he is ready to play. Now, he's not going to be somebody that is going to absolutely, dominate as a cover guy the way Corey Littleton does, although preseason, offers a lot of room for optimism because it looks like he's really improved in that area. But, my ultimate, point is that Kaiser, I think, coming out of the draft, went as late as he did because of, one, his measurables, but two, because he was NFL ready, but he doesn't have that, huge superstar ceiling that teams are looking for. I think what it comes down to now is you're seeing a lot of teams that are willing to pick that raw linebacker in the second round because his 40 time and his, overall explosiveness and just the fact that he might have a higher ceiling, but, are willing to pass on guys like Micah Kaiser that just have a better feel for the game and, have that football IQ that, just can't really be taught. So I think, the instincts are there with Kaiser, and Joe, I'll tell you, I could see him starting next to Corey Littleton this season.
Yeah, I actually kind of predicted that. I feel like I've made the argument with you that I think by the middle of this year, pairing at that position. And I do, the thing about Kaiser is I think, he's kind of a true 2-down guy. He's more of a run stopping guy. He'd be kind of a, one, first and second down sort of guy. And then Littleton can play sub package. And the thing you like about Kaiser is that, he one of the smartest players at that position in he's not super athletic. He's not going to be, I don't think he's really going to be, but he's going to be a steady guy. He's going to be a value guy. He's going to be a leader. He's going to be, good in the locker room. And, I think he potentially could be a Ram for a long time at that position and give the Rams some real value. And you may not have to worry about that role for quite some time if he's able to do it physically and doesn't get hurt. So, we'll see what happens with Micah Kaiser, but certainly you got to love the preseason he gave. You got to love the potential that he shows specifically in that role. He's what you want. And I think, and he's cheap. The NFL is going away from people in that role, but you do need him, especially on first and second downs. And I think, he's somebody who's going to be, a really good Ram for a long time, and lock down that position.
I agree. I definitely agree. Getting him in the 5th round, I think it's another one of those things that, that recent report that the Rams, offered an aggressive package for Khalil Mack. I think they're all in, and I don't think that they're afraid to get their hands dirty, get rid of a big value pick because, one, it saves you money. That's now a 1st round contract that's going to be off your books. But number 2, if you're able to hit big like a Micah Kaiser, if he ends up being as good as he looks in the 5th round, then you've found, in my opinion anyway, I think you found the formula for cheating the draft, so to speak. So, if you can pick up these, later round guys, it's your perfect opportunity to gather higher upper tier talent by basically shopping your 1st round pick every year, and then you save money, you get your player. So say you're picky, you want an Odell Beckham Jr., you want a Brandon Cooks, you're able to get that player, and then you're able to basically load the depth chart with these bottom of the draft UDFA guys that have the instincts and the coachability to be able to pick up, and you can develop them. I think the Rams, if this ends up working the way it looks like it's going to work, the Rams have really started this trend because I don't think you've seen teams do that. Now, the Bills have traded away their first-round pick. They moved up and took Sammy Watkins in the fourth round, or fourth pick overall in that draft. But I'm just saying, like, the Rams are absolutely, like, they're trading out of the first round, and they've now done that. They've traded a big pick twice. So,
well, I think the Patriots actually traded their entire draft 2 years ago for this reason. Very similar. So I think the Rams are certainly on the cutting edge. Some other teams are certainly on the cutting edge in that regard. But I think that really it's not so much. I mean, I think when you're talking about a team that's going to be paying, the biggest contract to a defensive tackle, the biggest contract to a running back, and is going to have to pay, has a quarterback coming off a rookie deal. You're paying somebody like Brandon Cooks, 5th rounders, 6th rounders, 7th rounders, UDFAs. They need to find cheap talent, anyway.
All right, so we'll touch a little bit on, because I mean we're running out of time here. We've done quite a few different breakdowns and taking a look at almost every position. As far as the edge goes, I think the Rams are going to be looking at quite a variety of edge rushers, outside backers that some have some power, some have some speed. Samson Ebukam, I think, is someone you have to put in highlighting letters, big bold letters. I think he's in for a really big season in year 2. Somebody that didn't really get a ton of a chance and opportunity last year with the veterans and Robert Quinn and Connor Barwin starting, but he did make a fairly big amount of noise for not really getting to play. And then preseason, I think you saw a lot of things that you like out of him. And then, the Rams keep 2 draft picks in Trayvon Young and Justin Lawler. And then they have Matt Longacre, who had 5.5 sacks last year. So, yes, he's coming off of a back injury, but looks like he's going to be good to go. And then, they just moved Dominic Easley to the outside linebacker spot. So, what's your overall, your outlook on this position?
I think I'm optimistic about inside backer. I think I'm optimistic about outside backer. I think, they obviously have been looking for some veteran help, perhaps, but I think that Longacre and Ebukam were their best outside linebackers last year. So I think the fact that they return, even though you've turned over the veterans at that position, I think as long as Longacre stays healthy, I think they're not going to have a problem at that position. If he doesn't stay healthy, then you're talking about you're going to need some production out of a rookie, whether it's Young or Lawler or I think the guy that's kind of being forgotten, obviously, and why not, because he's been hurt, is Okoronkwo. We were just talking about this off the air, and when you were mentioning that he potentially could be a big piece there, if he ever gets back from that foot injury. So I think they are, and plus I think they're going to be cycling through it. That's going to be one of those positions where anybody that gets cut around the league, the Rams are going to maybe kick the tires on a lot of people and cycle in some OLBs as the season goes on. So I think they really, there's so many different ways you could have criticized this front office and this coaching staff a couple years ago, with the way that they really looked like, the sport had kind of passed them by, focusing on running game and focusing on the running backs and linebackers. And I think they've done a really good job of kind of becoming, I don't want to call it space age, but certainly a contemporary football team. And I think that the transition that they've made at the linebacking position, really typifies that. So, they're going to throw a lot of bodies, a lot of athletes at these outside positions, and I think they're going to ride some hot hands. There's going to be a lot of movement. It's going to be the position to track throughout the season, but I think they've got some young players, some exciting young players with ability that that they can coach up, and that's the one position where they're going to have to do some work on this defense, and it'll be interesting as the season goes on. Certainly something we're going to be talking about all year.
It definitely is, and anytime you have a position group that wasn't necessarily, I don't want to say it wasn't focused on because the Rams spent 3 picks on it, but when it's a position group that the Rams didn't go out and necessarily get a marquee starter at, you're going to be scrutinized if it doesn't work. And I think, like I said off the air, I think Okoronkwo was actually the most talented player that the Rams drafted in this draft. I just thought that was an absolute A+ of a pick to get him in the 5th round, which I never could have fathomed. At one point he had 1st round buzz, and then he fell to the 5th round because he ran a 4.8 40. That injury hurts, but I think he's somebody that can come in at the end of the year. Not a lot of miles in his rookie year after really rehabbing his foot injury. I think if he's healthy, he can come back towards the end of the year and be kind of that rookie. Obviously, he's not a 1st-round pick like Derek Barnett of the Eagles, but I think he can make that. He can be that guy in that rotation that kind of, the Rams can kind of throw in there and kind of energize the defense. Again, really like what Ebukam has shown in preseason. Matt Longacre is probably the most unathletic, edge rusher I've seen, but he is so talented. He's just he's efficient. There's no wasted motion. He's a very fluid pass rusher. He's just not, he's not very athletic. Justin Lawler, what scares me with him is he's a very stiff pass rusher, and he does not get good dip. He has to win with power. So at the same time, you have a guy that has to win with power. You have a guy that's not extremely athletic and gets, he's very fluid in his pass rushing. And then you have Okoronkwo, who is just very violent, uses all sorts of moves to get to the quarterback. Ebukam's the speed rusher, and then Trayvon Young, you look at him, he's kind of the do-it-all. So, when you put that all together, you kind of have a different variety of guys off the edge. And then that's not including Dominic Easley, who's a former 1st-round pick that you're now moving to the outside linebacker spot. I think he's really going to thrive there. And in this rotation, I would not be surprised if eventually he's starting over Longacre, and they decide to go with Longacre in the rotation. I think they can go with whoever, because I think there's going to be plenty of times where they sub out for other guys, in different situations, different matchups, and so forth.
Yeah, I think you covered it well, and we'll see. I think I love the you mentioned Longacre and his body. What was Andy Benoit was with the great tweet talking about he's like the pass rusher with a dad bod, but he's actually sneaky athletic. So it's so true, and you gotta love somebody that's made an impact as a UDFA like that. I mean, he really was playing at a high level when he hurt his back last year, and to be able to come back off that back injury, very impressive. So good for Matt, and good for the Rams.
Yeah, and it's great with a player like him, because when the national audience wants to talk about the Rams, that guy could have 12.5 sacks this year, which would be a good year, and I think any Rams fan would take that. And that the national media is not going to talk about them. And when, draft time comes rolling along, they're going to say that it's a need because they just didn't get the production. That's what I love about Longacre. He's been underrated for a while, and I think as long as he stays healthy, I think he's going to be a key piece for the Rams. And it may seem like looking at Denver, they have Von Miller, they have Bradley Chubb. You'd like that stability on the edge, but it just doesn't always work that way. And where they have Von Miller and Bradley Chubb, they don't have Aaron Donald, Michael Brockers, and Ndamukong Suh. So you have to give a little to get a little, and I think if they're able to make this work, I think they've done the best job possible of balancing where they need to spend the money, where they need to find the talent, and where they don't need to, and where they can afford to maybe take a dip in the price tag. And I think they've done that with outside linebacker, and now we just have to see if the coaching and the overall potential really pans off.
You got it.
And then I think the emerging X factors, like I mentioned earlier, we had Pharaoh Cooper, John Kelly, and Joseph Noteboom to join that list from the defensive side of the ball. I think you have to start with John Franklin Myers, somebody that is going to win with power. He does have his fair share of speed. He has been used as an outside backer in preseason. He's already made an impact. He's been getting rave reviews from training camp. So he's a fourth-round pick that is kind of their gem of the entire draft that not a lot of teams really felt like he was going to be a fourth-rounder. The Rams may have reached per se, but I think they got a steal at the same time. And then Sebastian Joseph Day. And I say that because I did not think at first, when they made this pick, I wasn't a huge fan of it. I just saw somebody that was fairly limited as a rusher. It was really just a gap filler and wasn't extremely athletic and was sometimes clumsy at the point of attack. But honestly, Sebastian Joseph Day has significantly improved. If you want to go back and you want to watch the film, you'll see it compared to this preseason. He's way more aggressive. He's way more of a player as a rusher. He gets in the backfield consistently, and this wasn't preseason, so it's not against bona fide starters, but still, I think there's a lot to like about him, and he's going to be the guy. He's going to pass Tanzel Smart, in my opinion. He's going to be the guy right behind Ndamukong Suh, next in line to take over that nose tackle role. And then Trayvon Young and Sam Shields. So I added two extra guys instead of having the three for offense. Trayvon Young, I mentioned earlier, he does it all. You saw his ability to win as a run defender. He sets the edge very well. He's very athletic, so he can run sideline to sideline. He made the first down saving tackle on a scrambling Lamar Jackson in preseason. That actually came down to the fact that the Ravens decided to go for it and were stuffed. So that was a huge play. And, I know it wasn't that great of a game. It wasn't, the outcome wasn't the way it was, but Trayvon Young made a spectacular play there, showed off his overall range and his short area burst. But then, as a rusher, I don't think he can be discounted either. He's somebody that has loads of potential, but the issue was, for him, quite simply, he just couldn't stay healthy. And when he was healthy, he was very productive, but when he wasn't healthy, he wasn't healthy. So, as long as he stays healthy, I think he's an X factor. And Sam Shields, same thing applies. He had some concussion issues that ultimately led to what looked like was going to be a early retirement. Back when he was playing and starting every week for the Packers, he was one of the best corners in the league. I mean, he wasn't a top 10 corner, but he was right on the outskirts of that. He's one of the faster corners in football. He's a ball hawk, and it looks like the Rams really stole him based on the fact he hasn't played in a couple of years, so his price tag was extremely cheap. And you still saw, in preseason, he still has that ability. He still has that talent. I can't imagine that all goes away. And, he made a really nice interception where he undercut a throw to Sammy Coates. I think it was Brandon Weeden that threw in the Texans game. So, I thought he showed some good ball skills and, some quickness and, some overall instincts on that play. And, in preseason, I thought he was pretty good. And I think he's going to be an X factor, especially if there's an injury or, say, Aqib Talib takes a major step back that we don't see coming. I think Sam Shields is somebody to watch out for. As your fourth corner, that's just unbelievable to have Sam Shields. So, That's
Yeah,
that's my take on
it,
that.
it's hard to find X factors on this defense when you've got a defense full of stars. I mean, really, probably the best defensive front in football. Certainly, the deepest secondary in football. I mean, just the potential for maybe the best defense in the NFL since that great Denver defense under Coach Phillips. If I had to press for him, I love the Shields call. I would have gone with Franklin Myers as well. I think I'll go with Okoronkwo just because I think that I think that's an X factor that nobody's really thinking of. If he gets healthy, maybe he really can make a big impact. And I think Dominic Easley, if he really can, if he is playing. Oh, well, I think first of all, he's somebody who really, has a track record of having success in sub packages. So I think if they play some sub packages with some 4-man fronts, he's going to have a big impact there. I think also if he does play some outside linebacker, that could be really fascinating. It could be the type of move, that enables him to elongate his career, considering all the knee injuries he's had. Maybe he can make that transition over the season. It's a shame. Obviously, he's still coming off. He's coming off that injury. He wasn't able to make the transition during the off season. He's going to have to do it kind of on the fly. But I do think that you get those two injured guys. Not a lot of people are expecting a lot from this year. If one of them does pop, that has the potential to really make an impact in that secondary or defensively.
Yeah, and Joe, as you were going through that, I thought, another name really popped in my head for an emerging X factor, and I gotta say, we didn't really talk about the secondary. There's not really much to talk about. It's kind of like the defensive line. It's pretty shored up. When you have LaMarcus Joyner, John Johnson III, who I was so wrong about, it goes without saying, and then, Marcus Peters and Aqib Talib, I think you're pretty set. That's not including Nickel Roby-Coleman, one of the best nickel corners in the game. But I left out Marquis Christian. And the reason I say this is because, his role is going to be significant this year. The Rams do use 3 safeties yearly. They used Cody Davis quite frequently last year, who is now going to Jacksonville via free agency. He was a pretty big role. So regardless of that role, though, Sean McVay came out and actually said that the Rams have been using Marquis Christian as the dime backer. So you could be seeing him in different packages, you touched on that with the Corey Littleton taking over for Mark Barron, but it almost seems like they kind of want to flirt with the idea of Marquis Christian taking over the Mark Barron role. While yes, the place of Mark Barron would be taken over by Littleton, and say Micah Kaiser, steps right in there next to him, sure. But if it's certain packages where like that role that Mark Barron played, in the box and everything, like Christian could do that. And, I've actually highlighted Christian for next season as the starting free safety with, LaMarcus Joyner on a basic 1-year deal due to the franchise tag. But that's neither here nor there. I just wanted to throw him out there because I definitely think he's an X factor. And, if you want to get creative and you want to really piss off an offense, throwing him out there, having all that athleticism all on one field, that makes for, I think, a nightmare scenario for offenses, especially with the way we've seen Wade Phillips know how to use it.
Oh, good call. You got to get Marquis Christian in there. He's your boy, and he can lay the wood.
Boy. He can lay the wood.
Mm-hmm.
I think you texted me like right after, like Marquis Christian just popped your boy Tamarick. So your boy Marquis
tried to kill him.
Like he tried to kill him. Like, oh my god,
that's crazy.
I still remember that. That was funny.
Tamarick took it like a champ too.
Of course he did.
That was legit.
That is legit. I wish I was there. Oh well. Quick hit on special teams. Hecker is by far the best punter in the league. Zerline's probably the best kicker in the league, but Zerline is coming off an injury that was bad enough to keep him out of his first playoff game. How do you see this going for him this year?
I think it's a question. I think, back injuries are significant, especially for, people like golfers and kickers and, all that stuff. It is a question. And, I think he looked good in the preseason. He made some field goals. He did also kind of, there's a couple he left wide. Certainly he was locked in. The disappointment with the injury was he's, having a career year, having the type of year that he's never going to forget. And it's a shame, it got cut short because it was a significant aspect of last year. Losing him, kind of hurt their momentum going into the playoffs, I thought, even though, it's not something that kind of stands out as why they lost that Atlanta game. But I've got a little bit of, I'm not saying I'm worried, but, it's something you got to watch. I think we'll see, if he goes out there on Monday night and yanks a field goal, all of a sudden it gets in his head a little bit. You really want to see him get out there on Monday night and make the first one. So, we'll see. I have a lot of confidence in Greg, but, it's a significant injury and, you can't really kind of get beyond it until you see him make a couple.
I definitely agree with you there. And, this isn't anything new for Greg Zuerlein. I mean, he's battled injuries throughout his career. And at one point, I mean, he was on, I won't say he was on the brink of getting cut, but there was one year where it was not good. He actually he started every single game up until 2017. And then I think 2015 missed 2 games. But the thing with him, Joe, is that he had one year where he was actually, in 2015, he was injured. And he kicked all season injured because you have to keep in mind, and everyone has to keep in mind, once you are injured in any way as a kicker, you go on IR. And because you're a kicker, IR means that's the end of your season. No one is going to take their one injury designation and use it on a kicker. It's just not going to happen. So a lot of these kickers, it's a fact in the NFL, they will not really tell their teams when they're hurt. They try to kick through the pain first, and then if it's unbearable, then obviously, then they have to kind of speak up. But it's a thing because, Joe, you can be the team's kicker for 7 years and you're, locked in and you're great, but you suffer that injury and they're picking up some guy off the street and you don't keep 2 kickers on the roster, so you go right on IR and you might not even be on the team next year. That's just how it goes. So, in 2012, he had a 74.2 field goal percentage. In 2013, 92.9. 2014, 80. 2015 was what I would call the hell year for him. He had 66.7, which, begged the question, did he just lose his confidence altogether? And he came back strong in 2016. All of the rest of the team didn't, with 86.4.
That rough year was the year actually he was playing injured and didn't tell anyone. So I think that's maybe part. I remember talking to him about that, and I think actually it was with Johnny. Actually, Johnny was talking, and also with Bone, talked about how he was hurt that year and didn't really tell anyone. Tried to kick through it. No one really knew about it, and so anyway, that's your explanation there, I guess.
Yeah, and then, it comes back 2016, 86.4, and then this past year, 95%. By far his best. It's funny when you look at his stats. The most the Rams had ever had him kick as far as extra points was 34. He had 46 extra points kicked last year. So that tells you something on the offensive front. But, no, I just think, it's one of those things, like you mentioned, confidence, it can get shot, and I think it was shot in 2015, but I think he's learned from that, and if he could have an issue, it's definitely something to monitor. But I think we haven't seen the last of Greg Zuerlein. I'm not about to say that he's done I think he's the best kicker in the league, and when healthy, and I think he's healthy, and I think he'll be ready to go.
I'm there with you.
And then, moving on, as we wrap up the show, record predictions, Joe.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
this is the meat of it right here.
Yeah, because this is the one that we're actually going to make like a sound bite. We're going to play it repeatedly. So if you say, yeah, the Rams they're going to go 10-6 or whatever. If they go 16-0, you're going to hear about it. So no, I'm kidding. But yeah, the record predictions are big and people love them. So what is your record prediction for the 2018 Los Angeles Rams?
It's not anything earth-shattering. I'm not going to go, way overboard, and certainly I'm not going to undercut. Last year I predicted 8-8, and they were way over it. And then this year I'm going to predict 11-5, and hope for the Rams fans' sakes they'll go over it again. And but I think that's a decent expectation level for this team. Certainly, the absolute bare minimum for this team is probably 10-11 wins and winning the NFC West. I think if this team doesn't win the NFC West, a monumental failure. They absolutely have to win the division, get back in the tournament, and then once they're in the tournament, I think it's hard to, really look at it. This is going to be a group that, every playoff game that they're in could go either way in the NFC. It's going to be, a dogfight, and I think a lot of people are thinking Super Bowl, but if this team gets back to the playoffs, probably have to win a game to get further than before. So you're not going into 2 one and done situations. I think the absolute minimum this team's got to do is win the NFC West and win a playoff game.
Yeah, I think they have to get to the NFC title game. I really do. So last year I had 10-6 with Blaine and I going into the show, and we had both shared our predictions, and then when we did the show, I ended up switching mine to 11-5 because we went through and predicted all the wins and losses, and Blaine's like, what the hell? Like, you didn't say 11-5 before. I was just like, I don't know. I just, I had a hard time giving them that loss or whatever. And so I ended up being right with 11-5. Hopefully I'm going to be right with this one. I had the Rams originally going 13-3. I had it pretty much all off season. Until recently I decided to switch it to 14-2. I think when you look at teams like the Steelers and the Packers and the Rams, I think those are the 3 top teams in the league as far as I'm concerned. I think the Rams are number 1, and I have them at 14-2. I also have the Steelers at 14-2, and I have the Packers at 13-3. So I think those are the top 3 teams. I think the Rams are in for a huge dogfight between the Packers and the Saints to operate that number 1 seed, but I think ultimately the Rams will get that number 1 seed. But moving into the playoffs, Joe, where do you see this Rams team ending up?
Oh, again, I think it's a situation where it's really hard to ask them to do much more. I don't think you can expect them to make the Super Bowl or win the Super Bowl just because I think the NFC is so tough. I think they gotta win a playoff game. So I guess I'll put them. Let's say 11-5 is probably not good enough for a bye. So they'll win a wild card game and lose on the road in the divisional game. There's my. You're saying. Yeah, I'll stick with that. This is a team that's got to win a playoff game, and I think they got to evolve. I'm not gonna be mad at them if they do anything more than that. As a reporter, you kind of set expectations. I know a lot of people like to make predictions, and you can kind of, I don't know how much that's worth. I think it's better to kind of set expectations, and because fans will be either depending on what a team does, a fan even is either happy or pissed off. And I think Rams fans will have a right to be pissed off if this team either does not win the division or doesn't win a playoff game.
Yeah, see, I'm in the boat right here. I think the Rams are actually going to end up winning the Super Bowl. I've never picked the Rams. I've never picked the Rams to win the Super Bowl ever, even when they were good. It's just never been something that I've done. And last year I almost did it, and I was like, they're not coming from 4-12 to 11-5 and winning the Super Bowl. As much as I think as Sean McVay, I just there's just not enough there yet. I felt like it felt like that was too risky. But I think with this team, they've shored up all the loose ends, the guys that didn't really fit the system. Pretty much everyone on this roster now is who the Rams want on this roster. They're not like, there's no placeholders. And I think last year there were a few. So with that being said, I think the Rams are going to end up, beating Green Bay for the second time this season at the Coliseum in the NFC title game. And I think that they're going to play the Pittsburgh Steelers after the Steelers knock off the Tennessee Titans, who I had actually making the Super Bowl last year. And the reason I say that is because I think the Titans are in the same position. They got the young coach in Mike Vrabel. I think he's going to absolutely change the culture there. They needed it. I think having Matt LaFleur as the offensive coordinator, I think is really going to help Marcus Mariota. I think the Titans are going to be in for a really fun season for those fans. However, I just don't think they get it done his first year. I think the Steelers have too much firepower. I think that they reloaded. They're one of the most talented and complete teams I see on paper in the entire NFL. And so I came to the conclusion it'd be the Rams and Steelers. At the end of the day, I think that's a really good matchup for the Rams, because I think I just don't see how they're going to be able to stop Todd Gurley. When I look at that secondary, I think they'd be able to hold the receivers in check. Maybe Antonio Brown gets loose a little bit, but I think Marcus Peters would be on him. I think he'd do a nice job of covering him. And maybe Brown gets a touchdown or two. But I think, ultimately this Wade Phillips defense, I think, would put way too much pressure on Ben Roethlisberger. And we've seen Aaron Donald in one postseason game had 10 pressures on Matt Ryan, his first playoff game. In one half, it didn't, he wasn't able to really generate much after that, because, they were going with, quick three-step drops and quick slants and running the football. But Aaron Donald, when Michael Brockers was healthy, he was getting into the backfield at will. I think Aaron Donald is a game wrecker, and I think he would wreck that game. I think Todd Gurley would be able to, basically, if Jared Goff wasn't comfortable enough, I think Todd Gurley would be able to be enough to carry the Rams to that win. So I stick with it. I don't have a score for you, Joe, but I stick with that vivid prediction. It's going to be Rams over the Steelers in the Super Bowl. Never picked them before. I've picked the Steelers 3 times in the Super Bowl. I don't really know why, but I'm picking them again, and we'll see how it goes.
I think that would be some outstanding symmetry for the return to Los Angeles to avenge, that Super Bowl loss. And what was it, Super Bowl 14, I think?
Yeah, it was the 1979 game. But that was like a miracle season for the Rams. I mean, you go 9-7, and then you end up in the Super Bowl. I know teams hate the Steelers, or the fans hate the Steelers for that, but I mean, you have to look. I think that's just such an accomplishment looking back. I mean, I didn't live in that era, Joe, but looking back on that, I just think that's such an accomplishment for a 9-7 team. I know the Giants did it against the Patriots, but anytime a 9-7 team goes to the Super Bowl, you've pretty much defied all the odds.
No, you got it. Well, what's the Giants team that beat the undefeated Patriots team was a 9-7 team. How about that?
Yeah. Hopefully the Rams don't go 9-7 though. I would rather I'd rather have that not happen.
You'd rather have them to go 18-0.
Yeah, why not?
19-0.
I mean,
all right, buddy.
Hey, anything can happen. I think we'll sign off with I'll do a quick predicted accolades thing, and then we'll be good. My Rams MVP for the season, predicted wise, Todd Gurley. I think he's just going to be so much help for Jared Goff in year 3. I think, Joe, you hit it on the head. Aaron Donald's the best player on the team. Todd Gurley's the most important to the Rams. Mm-hmm. So Todd Gurley gets the MVP nod. And then Rams Rookie of the Year, I had John Franklin Myers. I just think the Rams are going to be able to use him in all different ways. Outside backer, whether it's that or he's a defensive end. Being, around that much talent, being, ahead of the curve, like everybody has reported he has, I think he's going to contribute on a very talented team, so I think he'll win my Rams Rookie of the Year. And then my Rams most improved player of the year is going to go to Samson Ebukam. And the reason I say that is because I think that Ebukam is going to end up with a monster season that really puts one of the outside linebacker spots to rest. If anyone thought it was a position of weakness, or you could go out and draft somebody, or you needed to draft 2 guys, I think those doubts will be put to rest by Samson Ebukam, who ends up being one of those 4th round steals. And then the most disappointing player of the year to me, I think, is going to end up being Mark Barron, because you've seen what he's been able to do in his Rams career. He's really revitalized his NFL career since being traded to the Rams and switching positions, but I just don't know. I think his numbers, his days are numbered, and I think, Micah Kaiser, Corey Littleton, Ramik Wilson, I think guys like that are, taking priority now over him slowly but surely. The coaching is trying to stay, faithful to, the guy that was starting last year and has, put together some productive football and has, continued to improve. But Barron with the cap number, I don't see him, lasting so much longer. And with the injuries, I think he's going to be in for a disappointing year, Joe.
I like those lists. I agree with you on Gurley for MVP. I think Rams Rookie of the Year, you got to mention Micah Kaiser there, somebody who maybe could make an impact as the season goes on. I think the easy pick there is Joe Noteboom, somebody who, if there's a potential injury on the offensive line, can pretty much save the season if he's able to contribute as a rookie. Most improved player, it's got to be one of those linebackers. The one I picked was Corey Littleton. And most disappointing player of the year, this is probably going to create a little bit of buzz, but I don't really mean it negatively. I think Brandon Cooks has an opportunity to kind of maybe let some fans down, because I think they look at his numbers, they look at the offense, they think he's going to be, one of the top 5 receivers in the game, numbers wise. But I think that, there's so many mouths to feed in this offense. You've got the offensive player of the year. You've got a stacked receiving core. You think everybody's going to get 1,000 yards and 7 touchdowns. I think it's a potential that Brandon Cooks maybe lets some fantasy people down from a numbers perspective. And maybe some you look at the end of the season, but I think his impact as a player will be super important, much in the way that I think Sammy Watkins was probably an underrated aspect of last year, just in terms of the impact that he made to opposing defenses. So, that's my explanation on that kind of controversial pick.
Yeah, you really just kicked the hornet's nest, didn't you? Oh, the podcast is over. Time to just throw the grenade, blow it up.
No, I think he's going to have a fine season. I just think numbers-wise, it's going to be hard for him to have the type of year that he's had in New Orleans and in New England, because there's this offense is just so darn good.
Yeah. I can understand that. I hope you're wrong, because I have him on every fantasy team, but
I have a lot of Robert Woods myself.
Yeah,
that's why
I have Woods as well. But I gotta tell you, I keep thinking about the backup quarterback room, or behind Goff and how they kept two quarterbacks, and I keep getting the question, what happens if Goff gets hurt? Well, I think going back to the Khalil Mack deal, I just have to say this. I have to get it off my chest. It has to be out there. So anyone that wants to say I didn't say it, if it happens, I was right. Anyway, I want to say that if Jared Goff, God forbid Jared Goff actually goes down and he has a significant injury, we're talking like out for the year, the Rams are trading for a quarterback. They're trading for a starting quarterback. And I believe out of the quarterbacks that would be viable candidates, I think the Rams might be willing to throw a first-rounder out there. They were willing to throw one out there for Khalil Mack. I think that just basically points to everyone's idea that they are all in. They are trying to win now. They are obviously invested for the future, and they can be that team that dominates the next decade if they play their cards right. But I just think that they're so protected about, winning this season. I think they would make a trade for either Sam Bradford to bring him back to the Rams. Somebody that I know sounds crazy because dude's always hurt, but you have the familiarity there. Obviously, Les Snead knows who he is very well. They did not leave on horrible terms. I think it makes sense for Arizona because you cash in, depending on how well they are doing. If they want the Rams to go bye-bye, they're not going to make a trade. But I think they can cash in and allow Josh Rosen to play. So now you gain, say, a first or second round pick, and you're able to let Josh Rosen do his thing, so you end up making out big time. Or I'll say Jameis Winston. And the reason I say that is because Tampa Bay, I don't know what they're doing. I don't frankly see them doing anything this year. I think Dirk Cutter was supposed to be fired last year, and Jameis Winston looks lost. They have a lot of weapons. He's taken a step back. I think he needs a change of scenery. I'm not saying the Rams would keep him, but if push came to shove and the Rams had to trade for quarterbacks, I'd say you would throw Sam Bradford out there as a name, Jameis Winston, and I'll say Jacoby Brissett. And that would be my three that I could see happening. So that is out there. If anyone has any further questions as to what I could see the Rams doing, well, then I'll answer them. But that is everything that's on my mind in that regard. Let's just hope Jared Goff doesn't get hurt. I'd rather not trade a first rounder for Sam Bradford if I don't have to, but like I said, I think they're going for it all, Joe.
Let me answer that. If Jared Goff gets hurt, I think Sean Mannion is going to shock everyone. I think he's going to play fine, and I think he's going to give him a shot to win with this team. So I'll go the other perspective. If you think there's an injury, you think they'll trade and go all in, which they might, but I think they'll give Sean Mannion a shot first, and I think he'll play well.
Or what if they trade for Nick Foles again?
How about Nick Foles and Sam and Bradford and
Keenum.
Case Keenum? Put them all together. Good call. This team. All right, buddy, we're here. We made it through the off season. The season is upon us.
We gave you a 2-hour podcast, so no complaints.
I know. Awesome. Now I get to go write my my game story. It'll be up a little bit longer. You get that podcast out. Let's do this.
Yeah, now I get to go edit the podcast. It's 3:36 a.m. on the East Coast.
Get to work. All right, brother. I appreciate it.
Well, yeah, man, it's been fun, and I'm looking forward to the season. So hope you guys enjoyed. That was episode 118, a long podcast for your enjoyment and your preparation, because we all need 2 hours to get prepared for the season. So I'm Jake Ellenbogen. He's Joe Curley. I'll be back. He'll be back at some point. And we'll record episode number 119, 120, 121, whatever. Thanks, guys, so much for tuning in. Once again, if you like what you hear, be sure to subscribe and leave a comment down below on iTunes. Thanks, guys, and take care.